eighth wonder of the world. It is identical since the day that it was opened to world commerce. The number of miles saved between New York and San Francisco by using the Panama Canal is a little short of 8,000 miles. All the operations that you're now viewing, nothing has been changed in almost a half a century.
The Stars and Stripes have flown unchallenged over the Panama Canal for the last half century. It is true, little here in the Republic of Panama, a country whose friendship we have taken for granted since its birth, the Panama Canal has now become a danger zone.
Panama, my loving Panama. Panama, Panama, old Panama, breaking point of the Americas, the land divided and the world united. Sam, Uncle Sam, he wants to keep the canal. It's a question of sovereignty. He won't recognize Panamanian nationality. The land divided and the world united.
In December, there is a darkness at noon as the clouds blacken the sky. The silent people wait for the storm that is almost inevitable. And at this moment in history in Panama, another kind of storm is also threatening. A little over a year ago, in November 1959, on the anniversary of Panama's independence, thousands of Panamanians demonstrated against the United States and tried to force their way into the Canal Zone. The leader of the mob, member of Panama's Chamber of Deputies, Aquilino Boyd.
The Panamanians felt that they should go to the Canal Zone on November the 3rd, 1959, because that was a way of showing the world that we are sovereigns in that part of our territory. And we wanted to bring the Panamanian flag over there as a proof of our sovereignty. And the way that we were received there by a general by the name Potter, it was outrageous.
It had been bruited around for quite a while that there would be disturbances on November 3rd. Various groups there, some of them communist-inspired, had said they were going to march into the Canal Zone. They attempted to do it, and under the law, and I believe in the law, I was required to stop them. We tried to do it with the police at first, without any show of arms, but finally, when the police were overrun and about 20% of them were in the hospital, why, we had to call out the troops.
The governor gave the order on the 3rd of November. The governor gave the order on the 3rd of November. The army was given full command, meaning to stop the demonstration by the border. They put up a sign, Panamanian, don't cross the borderline. Although they put up the sign, Panamanians still cross the borderline. And they're singing, Viva Panama, soberana en la zona del canal. Oh, oh, oh. Viva Panama, soberana en la zona del canal. 1959, the 3rd of November, a riot took place in Panama. The citizens were not mystified. It was led by Deputy Aquilino Boyd. When they went up 4th of July Avenue, American, Greek, Panamanians were through. The soldiers with their bayonets, throwing boom bullet and tear gas. The governor gave the order. On the 3rd of November, William Potter gave the order on the 3rd of November. The army was given full command, meaning to stop the demonstration by the border. They put up a sign, Panamanian, don't cross the borderline. Although they put up the sign, Panamanians still cross the borderline and are singing, Viva Panama, soberana en la zona del canal. Viva Panama, soberana en la zona del canal.
General Porter gave the Panamanians the impression that he has cucarachas in his head because he acted, and his reactions were very much unfavorable to the United States and to the government that he represents.
Well, I'm not sure as to the proper location of the cucarachas. That would be a subject of some discussion. Aquilino Boyd, who I know quite well, is a fine young man, fine appearing, and so on and so forth. He is a politico in Panama. He's one of the 57 deputies. I am sometimes suspicious of the statements of politicians, as are most people.
A group of patriots that went there were received by the United States Army with fixed bayonets, with bird shots, with hooves, with clubs, with tear gas. And the Panamanian people were very fond of the United States Army, the army that has fought twice for democracy. The heroes of Guadalcanal and Okinawa were certainly not at their best part when this man by the name Potter called on them to put up that show that was the disgrace of the relations of the United States with Panama.
The aftermath of riot brought increased tension and division to Panama. General Potter ordered the construction of a fence along a section of the Canal Zone. It stretched along the borderline with Panama, where no physical barrier had existed before, and it became a symbol, not only of distrust between the United States and the people of Panama, but also of a changing mood in Latin America. In January 1959, when Fidel Castro came to power in Cuba, no one realized that before the year was out, the emotions of revolution and inflamed nationalism would have infected all of Central and South America. Certainly few would have believed it possible for anti-American riots to be directed against the Panama Canal, the heart of our strategic position in Latin America. Why did these riots occur? What do they portend for the future? Will there be further riots? How secure is the Panama Canal? What lessons can we learn from these events in Panama? These questions are the subject of our NBC white paper. The Republic of Panama is located at the crossroads of the hemisphere. It links North and South America and divides the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. It is the bridge between the Caribbean, an extension of the Atlantic on the north, and the Pacific on the south. And the American-built Panama Canal, 50 miles long, slices Panama in half. The Canal Zone extends roughly 5 miles on either side of the canal. And it is there, at the 9th parallel, that the American flag flies, dividing a sovereign nation in two. This is the Panama Canal, a man-made strait, a funnel for ships moving from one ocean to the other. From 2,000 feet up, you can look out at the two oceans at once. From the Atlantic in the foreground, through Gatun Lake, then Gaillard Cut, to the Pacific in the distance. The seat of American government in the Canal Zone and the present governor, General W.A. Carter, United States Army Corps of Engineers.
This canal, of course, is a responsibility of the government of the United States. It was built by the United States. It's been operated as a public utility for world shipping ever since its inception. I can see the ships come through here. And every time they blow the whistle, it means more money in the till. The strategic value of the canal is as great now as it ever was. The chief user, much to everyone's surprise, is the United States. About 70% of the traffic through the canal in a year either is going to the United States or from the United States. It goes, of course, to all the ports in the world. However, the canal is of vital importance to the countries in Central and South America, particularly those countries on the west coast of South America. For example, I believe the figures are that Peru and Chile, about 70 to 80% of their entire export and import goes through this canal. It makes no profit. It runs at no cost to the United States. The only requirement for a ship coming through this canal is that she pay her money for her tolls in cash before we put a pallet aboard. Any ship of any nation that comes here goes through the canal. Of our 14,000 employees, about 10,000 are Panamanian citizens. But as long as it's the responsibility of the United States government to provide this world utility for the transportation of the world, I personally believe that the United States must continue to operate the canal.
The fact that we have always operated and owned the canal since it opened in 1914 is something Americans have taken for granted. And the story of the canal's construction is an epic chapter in American history. A graveyard of equipment remained as evidence of those who tried before us and failed. Ferdinand de Lesseps, the Frenchman who built Suez, met with ruin and heartbreak when 22,000 men died during his attempt. When the Americans began in 1904, they were confronted with a section of the world's worst jungle. The legend among diplomats at this time in Panama was that each of their predecessors was shipped home in a coffin. For Panama was a sinkhole of tropical fevers. They called it the white man's grave. Colonel William Gorgas set out to eliminate the dread yellow fever. Each mosquito killed by his Gorgas gangs, as they were called, cost the United States an estimated $10. But his work saved 70,000 lives. Colonel George Washington Goethals, appointed by Theodore Roosevelt to take command of construction, went down the line to inspect the work every morning. And under his charge, new world records were set for excavation. An old-timer recalls some of his memories of those early days.
Boys from the canal used to go in on Saturday nights for the regular high time at the cantinas and other spots of interest in the city, but I wouldn't say that it was very wild. It always had a charm for me because it was something so different than I had ever encountered in my life before. Roosevelt, at that time, set the precedent of a president leaving the United States territory and coming into a foreign country. Said when he was here that he came for a first-hand look at how things were going. While he was here, he took great delight in slipping away from the official crowd that had him in tow and was found somewhere else all of a sudden. They didn't know just how he got there, but he got there, and usually in conversation with some employee of some division.
In August of 1914, after 40,000 men had labored for 10 years, the oceans were finally to be joined at Gamboa.
Well, of course, a great deal of excitement prevailed at Gamboa, where the dike was to be blown up. The explosion came from President Wilson pressing a button on his desk in Washington. It was quite a thing to see that much material fly into the air and see that great sweep of water come in and fill up the cut. I think everyone that saw that dam blow up received a great thrill from the sight.
The thrill and the excitement of that opening day, August 15th, 1914, was reported round the world. America boasted its greatest achievement, and our growing military, economic, and political might were symbolized in the American flag that flew over it. But the Panamanians prefer to emphasize another side of the story.
Long live Panama, which was discovered by Vasco Núñez de Balboa.
The Spanish explorer Balboa had built a city in Panama in 1501, and the existence of the Camino Real, the royal road across the isthmus, represented a proud Spanish tradition that predated our own. In fact, Simón Bolívar in 1826 had wanted Panama to be the capital of the Americas. In 57 years, 53 rebellions were fought by Panamanians trying to free themselves from Colombia. Theodore Roosevelt boasted, "I took the isthmus," when he helped create the country of Panama in 1903, using U.S. military might to back their cause of independence. A treaty was rushed through, granting the United States the right to build a canal, but Panamanians claim the treaty gave them few benefits. The Canal Administration brought in 45,000 laborers from the West Indies to do the heavy work under American supervision. This influx of English-speaking Negroes created problems of assimilation that still exist and cause resentment even today. The Americans built a comfortable colony for themselves, while shanty towns sprang up for the other workers, which still remain. The most bitter Panamanian complaint was against payroll practices, the double standard set by the so-called gold and silver rolls. The gold roll, which meant high pay for Americans. The silver roll for the others, including native Panamanians, meant a tropical wage scale and lower rates even for comparable work. When the Americans arrived, the Panamanians say they set a social standard reminiscent of the British in colonial India. Here then was the Panama Canal, a vital strategic, military, and economic resource of the United States, which also benefits Panama to the tune of $63 million annually, directly and indirectly, 1/6 of their national income. But the Panamanians feel they should have larger economic benefits from the canal, which they consider their greatest national resource. The historical resentments of Panamanians toward Americans were brought into focus by the question of whose flag should fly over the Panama Canal. According to the Treaty of 1903 between the United States and Panama, the United States is granted rights in perpetuity to act as if it were sovereign in the Canal Zone. The vague phrase, "as if it were sovereign," is interpreted by this country and most experts on international law as giving the United States full rights in the zone. It is not so interpreted by the Panamanians. Former Panamanian President Dr. Arnulfo Arias, considered by many the most powerful man in Panama, talks to NBC News reporter Harry Rasky.
I may tell you that the Treaty of 1903, when the United States officials took charge of the Canal Zone, they did not raise the American flag. Only the Panamanian flag was raised. And in 1906, during an investigation in the Senate of the United States, the first governor of the Panama Canal, General Davis, admitted that the flag of the United States was not being raised in the Canal Zone, and that only the Panama flag, and that there were doubts in his mind whether the United States had rights to have the flag in the Canal Zone. Subsequently, after 1906, the United States started to put up the flag and eliminate the Panamanian flag. Since then, that has been a source of resentment on the part of the Panamanian people.
Representative Daniel Flood of Pennsylvania, who has long had an interest in Panama.
The juridical position of the United States of America is clear. Once you have established a constitutional position, and the position of the United States of America in the Canal Zone is a constitutional position, the result of a treaty with the Republic of Panama, ratified by the Senate of the United States. Therefore, under our Constitution, that treaty becomes the law of the land. The Canal Zone is an extension of the coastline of the United States of America.
Just opposite Panama City, the capital of Panama, and separated from it by only a street, an American town has been built in the Canal Zone, Balboa. Its residents, United States citizens, have definite views about their rights and the place in which they live.
Do you, as a resident here, feel that this is part of the United States?
I don't feel that it's a part of the United States, but I do feel that it is land over which the United States has acquired complete jurisdictional rights in perpetuity, and that the United States can do with the place what it pleases so long as it does it within the bounds of the treaties that exist between Panama and the United States governments.
What the Canal Zone residents have done is to recreate a tiny slice of America on the 9th parallel. The morning paper is the Panama American, in English. The banks are American, and so are the stamps. Movies and television shows are a little late in coming, but 100% American. The supermarkets have attractively low prices, which has been a source of resentment to those who live across the road in the Republic of Panama, where prices for the same goods are high. The central eating place along the main street, called a clubhouse, once maintained a color line. It no longer does, but Panamanians are still critical of the attitudes of U.S. citizens in the zone.
Well, we call them Sonians, more or less, and I believe they are different kind of Americans because the real Americans that come here after 1 or 2 or 3 months, they live in the Canal Zone, they think they're better off than everybody else, and really we don't believe so. In the United States, they're very hospitable. Here, they're stubborn, they're snob, and they don't like to mix with the Latin American people.
The Panamanians point to the Tivoli Hotel as an example of American aloofness in the Canal Zone. Some of the permanent guests say they haven't stepped into the Republic of Panama in years. The Republic of Panama is just across the street. For all the mixing that goes on, says one American, that street might as well be the Grand Canyon. At the schools in Balboa and other zone towns, the day always begins the same.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
They pledge allegiance to the country many have never seen, descendants of the men who once dug the canal.
Indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. My country, tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my waters lie, land round hill and dry, from every mountain side, let freedom ring. Hay cantado por mí la victoria, en el campo pidieron Dios.
Across the road in Panama, only a stone's throw away, Panamanian children begin their day the same way, singing their national anthem, but in a different setting. The name of the slum is Puente del Rey, which translates Bridge of the King. Here, too, are descendants of the canal diggers. The setting is Panama, but this could just as easily be Caracas, Venezuela, or Rio, Tegucigalpa, Lima, Santiago, Havana. For Panama, in its basic internal problems, is almost indistinguishable from any other Latin land. For most Latin Americans, there is only one hope for breaking the circle of poverty, the government lottery. In Panama, it begins promptly at 11 a.m. Sunday morning and is all over a few minutes later. As in all Latin America, there is heavy unemployment. This is accentuated by a system of patronage rather than a constant civil service. When the administration changes, all government jobs also change, and a man must wait his turn. The current president, in office only a few months, has started regular days of audience with the unemployed. Weeks of waiting, a Latin learns to wait, may lead to a personal interview and perhaps a job. President Chiari, a millionaire but considered a liberal, talks to a lucky few, but knows there is not enough work to go around.
Pues sí, entonces se la dejamos ahí al papel de la guía de la cuestión de la carrera administrativa. Sí. Sí, a don Marco. O sea, él dijo que iba a ver qué te dijo.
Like all Latin countries, Panama suffers not only from urban poverty, but also from underdevelopment in the rural areas, where over half the population lives. The interior, potentially rich, is almost without roads. The wheel and even the plow are strangers here. The machete is the chief farm implement, frequently the only one. Most of the farmers are squatters, contributing nothing to the national economy and barely able to survive themselves. The chief industry, as in most Central and South American countries, is owned by North Americans. In Panama, the proprietor of the largest banana plantation in Central America is the Chiriquí Land Company, a part of the United Fruit Company. It is the largest private landowner in the country, employing 11,000 workers, most of them descendants of the Indians from the hills. In the past, much criticism had been directed against the company for the working conditions of its Panamanian employees. But today, conditions are much improved. The workers earn more and live better than laborers outside the plantation, even though they are crowded 6 families to 6 rooms, all sharing a common kitchen. The company provides a free school for the children of employees and a clinic with free hospitalization for those making less than $100 a month. There is also a company store, but its goods are priced too high for most of the laborers. Even though time has brought changes for the better, the fact that a United States concern is still the largest private employer in Panama is a continuing source of irritation, and many Panamanians still refer to the Chiriquí Land Company as El Pulpo, the octopus. President Chiari explains why there has been a growth of anti-Americanism.
Sometimes I believe it has developed more than anything else on those countries where the economical way of living is very, very poor. And then, of course, they have seen that in some other places, like in your own country, there are wonderful ways of living. They would like also to have the same thing. But what happened? When they buy most of their product from your own country, they have to pay a very high price for those products on account that you have a very high standard of life. But when we try to sell our products, every country in American South America also, then we resent that the prices that we get for our products does not compare with the high cost of the product that we pay for when we import it from the United States. And in that way, as I say, you cannot take everything for you that is good and then let the other people take the poorest or the shortest piece or whatever it has been tried to deal between the two countries. And that is one of the reasons of these little ill feelings and resentments that has occurred between Latin American people and the United States people.
Fíjese que yo llevo 3 años aquí en Panamá.
This is Father Laburo, a Jesuit priest. He is speaking about an additional source of resentment in Panama. Panama, says the priest, is a small country. There are a few rich people, and there are many poor. And this is what disturbs Father Laburo, the tremendous contrast between the poor in Panama and the few rich families who dominate the country and have traditionally been concerned only with themselves. His message speaks for itself.
Y los de abajo han odiado siempre a los de arriba. Y esta es la lucha tremenda que estamos padeciendo aquí. Pues. Ahorita están los ricos en una especie como de inquietud. Ellos ven que estamos en un...
Father Laburu sounds a warning when he says, those on top have worried very little about the ones below. Those below have always hated the upper classes. And I tell you, this is a tremendous struggle that's going on. Over Panama and Latin America in general, a storm was gathering. But most Americans didn't know it or ignored it. The problems of oppressive poverty, a small, wealthy, ruling oligarchy, a one-product economy, a sense of offended national pride, an unstable political system, all these had existed for generations. But now, a new idea was injected, the revolutionary message of Fidel Castro. In 1959, a new voice was heard to add to the stirrings of resentment against us and of the poor against the rich. And the voice came from outside Panama.
Traicionar al pueblo. Desde luego que para el señor presidente de los Estados Unidos, lo que nosotros hemos hecho por nuestro pueblo es traición a nuestro pueblo.
Beamed by powerful transmitters from Cuba, the voice of Fidelismo was heard by the Panamanians.
Leales a nuestro pueblo, hubiésemos sido leales a los grandes monopolios norteamericanos que explotaban la economía de nuestro país. Al menos he de constancia de las maravillas que encontró la revolución al llegar al poder, que son ni más ni menos.
Castro's voice was aimed most directly at students, and his message helped spark the feelings of nationalism and rage that caused the students to lead the anti-American riots of November 1959.
Students at the Panama U, what you are going to do? What is that your text marks are?
This is Panama University, established 25 years ago, the center of Panamanian intellectual life.
And you will live big till you can.
Rich Panamanians send their children abroad to be educated, and the students here come mostly from the emerging middle class. A majority of them must work, and they attend classes only at night, leaving an almost deserted campus during the daytime. The president of the university, Dr. Garay.
These young students of ours, most of them are not even in the university, suffer from reality. Reality pushes more the student towards a political way of thinking than does any other thing. Give a country a satisfactory political system, and you will find the whole country, including the 19 and 18-year-olds, backing that system and even defending it to the last drop of blood.
The majority of students, Panamanian students, I think, agree with the Cuban Revolution because they see in the Cuban Revolution what we can say the revolution of Latin American revolution. The same things Castro is trying to resolve is the same thing we have. We have an historical equality with other Latin American countries. We have equal problems, and we have the same enemy.
At the beginning, I sympathized with Castro, but not anymore because I don't like his ideas. He's sort of a communist, and I don't sympathize with the communism.
And I don't care if he is communist. Like the Cuban says, if Fidel is communist, well, I don't care. They put me in the list, you understand?
In other words, what you're trying to say is that if what Fidel stands for is communist, then that's okay with you.
Okay, I don't care. If to be communist is to be freedom, okay, I like the communist, if that is the correct expression.
The revolutionary spirit extends to others. Deputy Thelma King, representing a small minority opinion in Parliament.
I am with Castro, definitely.
How many people in Panama would you say were for Castro? What percentage of the population was for Castro?
I think the majority of the people in Panama are with Castro, because we understand that if it was not for Castro, the United States would not change their policy with Latin American.
How about if there was going to be a revolution here in Panama? Do you think that a firing squad would be necessary?
I don't like it. I personally don't like it, but I know in a revolution, so many people have to die. Maybe when the one come, I will be one.
Ambassador to Britain, Roberto Arias, alleged leader of one aborted revolution.
I've been accused of being involved in a revolutionary attempt, or in various revolutionary attempts here in Panama. I still believe that Panama needs a revolution. I think it needs a revolution because it needs profound social reform. And God grant that it be a bloodless one.
Revolutionary talk, Castroism, anti-Americanism, internal resentments added to the charged atmosphere. As the first anniversary of the riots of November 1959 drew close, tension rose in Panama. What made the situation even more dangerous was that Latin American experts were predicting that riots in the Canal Zone in November of 1960 could spread through all Latin America, endangering our whole position there. In the Latin American section of the State Department, the Panamanian desk was busier than any other except the Cuban. What emerged was a reappraisal of our approach to the Panamanian problem. The entire American High Command in Panama changed. The State Department sent a new ambassador, ex-FBI man and former envoy to the Dominican Republic, Joseph Farland.
I no sooner got off the gangplank onto the shores of Panama than I realized that there existed in Panama a political climate which did not augur well for the best relations between our two countries. The atmosphere was charged politically and emotionally, and the possibility of real conflict was in evidence.
The Pentagon appointed a new head for its Caribbean Command, a man with a good record in human relations, Major General Theodore Bogart.
I discovered a situation existing here which represented a great cleavage in relations between this community and the Panamanian community. I realized that what we were seeing was a continuation of a situation that grew out of the last November situation here in the Panama.
Well, it's always customary for an incoming ambassador to hold an initial staff meeting, and this I did. My instructions to the staff were short and explicit. I told each and every one to forget the necessity of writing reports, to get out and to meet the people and to shake hands, and to carry to those people the message of friendship.
Operation Friendship, Amistad was the name General Bogart gave to a plan for starting the flow of people across the borderline again. It involved athletic meets at which Panamanian and American children competed in sporting events. American jazz played an important role in joint entertainment. American and Panamanian musicians performed together in the Republic of Panama. Panamanian choirs came to the Canal Zone for the first time to sing Spanish songs before mixed audiences. Operation Friendship was admittedly a public relations gesture, a hurried effort to ease a strained situation. Some questioned its effectiveness.
People that actually count in this thing do not pay much attention to Operation Friendship because the word friendship, as I know it and as I have found it in the dictionary, definitely indicates a two-way street. At the present time, the attitude is not so. The friendship is being offered by the people of the Canal Zone, but is not being accepted.
On September 17, 1960, the Panamanian press received a bulletin that President Eisenhower had ordered the flying of the Panamanian flag at one spot inside the Canal Zone in a head-on attempt to deflate anti-American feeling. In record time, flagpoles were set up in the area called Shaler's Triangle, close to the border with the Republic of Panama, and a quick ceremony was arranged to raise the Panamanian flag. The move drew attack from some quarters in Congress.
This is Munich in spades, if I make myself clear. I think the decision was made in the hope that they would appease the mobs which are dictating the foreign policy of the Republic of Panama. It is appalling that any action by our Department of State and or by the President and or by the White House, that vague thing called the White House, which we're not sure what that means. They advised the President, and they advised him improperly and wrongly in this case.
I am particularly gratified at the President's decision. And while I am not in a position, in my capacity here, as you can well recognize, to enter into any controversy regarding the advisability of the decision, I can only say this, that the decision taken by the President was in accord with the reporting from this embassy.
Well, in my own opinion, I thought that was one of the most sensible decisions and positive actions that the American government had taken toward the Panamanian government to sponsor a good relationship and fraternal feeling for many, many years in the past. I thought it was an excellent thing.
Despite the controversy, the Panamanian flag was flying. The question was, would this rushed move head off the predicted November riots on the anniversary of Panama's independence? In the days that preceded the anniversary, all military precautions were taken. The Panamanian National Guard prepared. And on the U.S. side in the zone, all military equipment was kept in condition in the event of any emergency. Meanwhile, a message of forbearance was preached in the American Cathedral of St. Luke's in the Canal Zone.
Amadísimos hermanos míos,
And in the Panamanian Church of Father Laburu, he says to the women of his congregation, I urge you to be calm this year. Tell your husbands not to demonstrate, to be patient. The Americans in the Canal Zone are changing. Let us live in harmony. On the morning of the day the riots are anticipated, the streets of Panama are unusually quiet. Along 4th of July Avenue, the borderline, Panamanian National Guardsmen wait. Canal Zone police take up positions at Shaler's Triangle, where the Panamanian flag flies. U.S. forces are ready for trouble, but every effort is made to avoid it. As a personal gesture of friendship, General Bogart exhibits the Panamanian flag outside his home. And for the first time in the half-century history of the canal, Panamanians are invited, in celebration of their own Independence Day, to parade through the U.S. Canal Zone. Along 4th of July Avenue, in front of the post office where last year's riots were centered, there is the first rush of morning traffic. Panamanian National Guardsmen move into position, but no American troops. And then the parade into the Canal Zone. Past the homes of zone residents, past the American church, the Panamanian flag is paraded. Students from the University of Panama, some of whom took part in last year's riots. Some zone residents are skeptical, still expecting trouble. And now into Shaler's Triangle, the likely location of any disturbance. Cameras from half a dozen countries come to report trouble. Panamanian anthem, played in the United States Canal Zone. And then it is over. In contrast with the year before, not one placard, not one anti-American sign, not a single rock thrown, no words of anger.
Well, that proves you that the Panamanian people do not hate the American people. Mr. Eisenhower, in September, issued a presidential order, an executive order, so that the Panamanian flag flies right next to the American flag in the Canal Zone. And I think that that is the explanation why we didn't have to go this year over there.
I guess the Panamanians, especially the youth, are giving the United States a new opportunity to arrange our complaints in a friendly way.
Well, the demonstration doesn't happen just because the circumstance that we have the last 3rd of November don't have this year. First, the United States, the parliament, put out his troops and the special guards they have. We don't see any gas masks. We don't see any guns or things like that. And, well, we can demonstrate like the last time, but.
Would you say that this was a victory for the State Department?
Well, not completely a victory. They changed the way of fight, that's all. But in a big combat, a little victory does mean that they are winning the fight.
Well, the use of the word victory is not fully descriptive. What we did, both Panamanians and United States citizens working together, was to reverse a very dangerous trend. We must never forget that Panama, situate as it is the crossroads of the world, and much of our policy is reflected in Panama. The fires that we found have been banked. There's much yet to be done.
Sí.
Yes, says Father Laburu, there is much to be done. Perhaps now our own rich are going to change. They must know if they don't give with their money today, tomorrow they'll pay with their blood. The people of Panama, the people of Latin America, have been slow to change. In their religious rituals, they cling to an old Spanish march, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. But today they're on the move, stirring from the darkness of their past. Throughout Latin America, a great explosive force is ready to erupt. They look to us for leadership, for help. They can no longer be ignored.
I feel that if this help doesn't come quickly, all of the countries of Latin America will go into a chaotic condition. The help is needed immediately, urgently. Otherwise, the masses are going to revolt against the respective governments, and it will be a very difficult problem then. Not only a problem for ourselves, which will be great sufferers, but also for the United States.
Well, you must realize that there have been a lot of time that when we just talk and talk, but there is no action. And I don't believe that now is time for talk. It is time for action, and I mean it. I mean it.
The events of last November in Panama must be judged in the perspective of history. Rushed gestures of friendship, hurried recognition of national pride, and a deliberate attempt to avoid a riot paid off as a stopgap measure. But the lasting problems of Panama's great economic and social needs and the importance of helping its people to help themselves cannot be solved so easily. What is required is not response to a riot, but the careful, advanced planning of a consistent program toward Latin America, taking into consideration the requirements of the people, the need for internal reform, and the knowledge that the tide of events is bringing inevitable change in the hemisphere. If Panama is truly the mirror of our attitudes toward Latin America, we must realize that magnificent and strategic as the canal is, as an economic and military resource, it may in the long run prove less important to our country, and in fact the world, than our handling of the social challenges that make the Panama Canal a danger zone. This is Chet Huntley.
Panama, Panama, if it's a matter of we Panamanian, we are friends of the American. It is not no criticism, but Panamanians don't want nothing to do with communism. Panama, Panama, old Panama, the land divided and the world united. Viva Panama, Panama, mi patria querida.